I would say more than any other episode this season, I never knew what was going to happen next. Every single scene in this episode of Fargo season 4, episode 7, uh, was insane. Characters were doing and saying things that I didn't understand where they were going with it. And I'm saying this all in a positive light. It was very enjoyable. It was legitimately edge of your seat entertainment because I never knew what was going to happen. And then based on the final scene, I really don't know how next week's going to go down.
I think the only scene that had kind of an idea was when Mayflower poisoned him, but I didn't know why she was doing it. So like you said, there's all the whys weren't answered. It actually raised more questions than it answered this episode, which to me, for a show that had so many questions to begin with, that's crazy to still have so much stuff unanswered with so few episodes left. I'm really excited to see the rest of it.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing where it was that episode where a lot of questions were thrown out the window of, oh, how is Orietta going to deal with this? How's she going to maneuver around Doctor such and such? Because perhaps he's a little suspicious or more cautious around her now. How's Lloyd going to handle things? Every like you mentioned earlier, I think, Brian. Just like every little scene where they're approaching a problem that was set up previously, almost left me just kind of like just surprised in some way.
Yes. As I said, we're talking about Fargo season 4, episode 7, Lay Away. I'm Brian here with Spencer and Larry, and this is Pulp Mythos. If you've not subbed to the channel, please do so you'll be notified whenever we put up new content. Got to hit that bell too. Hit the upvote button. Leave a comment. Yeah, it's been fun these last couple weeks. The channel is, I've been saying it a lot lately. It keeps growing and growing, but it really has. We've had our best month ever, and we really appreciate that. So picking up, we were talking about Orietta Mayflower. Might as well go into that. Yeah, she kept promising the good doctor, with Dr. Harvard, that she would make him some macaroons. She made 3 versions. She made her, strawberry, chocolate, and vanilla.
Vanilla, yeah.
He went with the bland-ass vanilla. And
she said, look good.
And I like vanilla, but I just, of those 3 choices, I thought it was funny that he picked that one. Yeah, it was the last macaroon he'll ever have. She pulled a Joffrey on his ass, and it appears that he's dead or going to die momentarily.
Doesn't
Go ahead.
Doesn't it show just like the sick amount of pleasure that she takes in what she does, given the amount of effort she puts into baking these things? She could just bake chocolate chip cookies and everybody eats those. But she wants to take your favorite treat and kill you with it most of the time, it seems.
There's definitely something about the baking that's a part of her whole sick thing.
And it seems like she learned how to make those, because she said she thought it was from one culture, but it was another, and she read some books and she learned how to make macaroons just to poison them with his food of choice.
Well, and she didn't just make like a couple; she made a whole jar or a whole tin,
right,
full of them. She made 30 cookies, 3 different kinds, just to poison him with one cookie.
Yeah,
macaroon. My kids have made them before. My oldest loves baking, loves doing all that shit, and she's made them a couple times, and they're really good, but they're not easy to make. So when she was talking about making macaroons to do this, I'm like, that's a process. So for her to spend hours upon hours to make these macaroons to just poison them, it's like you said, Larry, it's a sick pleasure she gets out of the whole process.
And this serves 2 purposes for her. A, she had heard earlier that Josto, wanted him dead. So I think, this may have played into that. But more so, she wanted to look at that letter. And she's trying to, figure out what's going on, who's gunning for her. So, this action solves 2 problems, or 2, goals for her.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that, like you said, she started reading the letter, and then at the bottom where it was like a concerned citizen, she looked confused for a second, but then her eyes lit up. So I don't know if she figured it out or if she was just happy to have killed again, because she looked like that when she walked out after killing the guy with gout. It's almost like she's happiest when she just killed somebody. So I'm not 100% sure why she was grinning, but she looked awfully proud of herself when she left his office.
Yeah, and she's even planning her reaction, as he's dying, just to make it seem more authentic.
Help!
So Defi confronts Otis in this episode, and this is an episode full of setups and full of laying your cards out, and Defi lays it out. He's clearly aware of, for the most part, what's going on. He's aware of the two factions. He's aware that Defi's on the take. He may not know all the details as far as what Otis is, or the Otis is on the take. He may not be, aware of all the details, but he's aware of the situation, and he tells him. And they basically end their partnership there. We also see Defi throughout the episode in strategic scenes observing, just simply observing. Where does Defi's story go? What is going to happen? What is his goal? Is he trying to take down these factions? Is he trying to clean out the police station? We know the original reason he was sent there, but clearly at this point, or at least it appears to have.
I'm not sure. I was actually looking it up what the U.S. Marshals roles was in the 50s, because, they used to have marshals that were, like the Texas Rangers and like all these things. They were kind of like state cops that went, into other states and helped out. And then I know that when they, came up with the U.S. Marshals, it was kind of have almost not a precursor to the FBI, because that was, during the Roaring '20s ish. But I'm curious as to what the marshals' roles were back in those days. I don't know if they were, trying to get them on racketeering. I don't know if they were an offshoot of the FBI. I'm not 100% sure what legally their role was. So I can't tell you what it is that he's trying to do, because I really don't have any idea. Like, it seems he's got a hair up his ass about something, and I'm not sure why or what.
Yeah, it's hard to say whether he's waiting for the fallout, whether he can tell that things are coming to a head here, and he's waiting to take advantage of that, or whether he's just solely set on his original goal, and he's trying to take in Ethelrita's aunt and her girlfriend, but if anything, I'm pretty sure at this point, I'm all but sure. Well, 100% sure. I think that we can rule out him being corrupt in any way. Well, clearly he's a racist, but he's not a corrupt cop in the sense that he's trying to take advantage of this from a criminal standpoint. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe so. At least nothing so far has
Led us to
shown
believe that in any way.
Yeah. Speaking of Ethel Rita, she's really not in this episode outside of one scene. Her parents are not in the episode at all. Her aunt is in there for yet one scene, basically just being told by Loy Cannon to get out of town and stay out. So not a whole lot from the Smutney crew. But the one scene with Ethel Rita I thought was interesting because she meets, was it Lemuel Cannon, the eldest son of Loy. And they had this little interaction and then it ended. I didn't know if that was trying to set up something potential down the line or what that was meant for. But the best part about that whole scene was the creepy ass zombie, ghost, death, whatever in the coffin, having a little peek. I was just like, oh, God. But yeah, what do you think that was all about? And do you think there was any reason those two interacted briefly, or what are your thoughts on Ethel Rita?
Well, that was the thing, because we talked about this, Brian, earlier, that each character kind of had their. I mean, Loy had a lot in this episode. Josto had a little bit. They focused on a lot of different stuff, but Ethel Rita, Otis, and Orietta had very limited scenes, but they had very I felt like they were important scenes. So
Yeah.
Ethelrita's scene,
Otis had quite a few
Yep.
this particular one.
yeah, I just felt like he wasn't the focus of, but like one scene
No, yeah,
kind of included in others. But I think Ethelrita's is almost foreshadowing, but I'm not sure what it's foreshadowing yet. And that's, once again, like I said, we get a bunch of answers, or they kind of throw out some of the questions and kind of pose new ones. And I think this is one of those ones where I feel it's foreshadowing something, but I'm not for sure what yet.
Yeah, it's still not clear, and I still believe, as we've said in previous episodes, that this specter or this thing that we're seeing represents death in some way, and in what way that relates to Lemuel or Etherita, it's hard to say at this point. Not exactly clear. But like you said, it was surprising how little screen time she had in this episode as well.
yeah. This one in particular, it was a shorter episode. The last two have been a bit shorter than the other episodes of the season. I believe these clocked in at like 43 minutes or something along those lines. Josto, I don't know what the hell
Before we
Josto.
talk about Josto,
Well,
Okay,
I
okay.
looked up the U.S. Marshals thing because I knew about like transporting prisoners and stuff because they're kind of in charge of the witness protection and stuff. But what it said was, among their many duties, they apprehend federal and state fugitives, which is how they started. Protect federal judiciary, operate the witness protection program, which I knew. Transporting prisoners, but I didn't know this one: the seize property acquired by criminals through illegal means.
oh,
Ooh,
That's the one I
okay.
didn't know. That's the one that now it makes more sense because I knew the first couple ones, getting the prisoners. I knew the witness protection, but that seized property acquired by criminals, I didn't know that part of their job. So
that's
makes a
Loy's
little bit more.
whole operation, or
Yeah,
part. That's his thing. Damn. I wonder if that'll play in.
So then
what
yeah.
they got. So yeah, I didn't know that was part of their thing. So now I'm like, oh shit. Well, it makes way more sense now.
Yeah, so Defi could wind up playing a much bigger role, than I originally thought. I still have a feeling he might overplay his hand in this, and that Defi will likely be dead by the end of the series.
Josto, speaking of someone who I think might be dead really soon. I mean, I could be wrong, shit, but Josto goes to Lloyd Cannon, and tells him that his son Satchel is dead. And he lays out this whole story. And he basically tells him he can kill Giotano. It's clear that Josto believes he has a brilliant plan figured out. And he's laying it out in that sequence. And for whatever reason, he believes he's going to survive. He's right in this instance. But that whole sequence, it was, as a viewer, it was amazing because I literally didn't know what was going to happen. I was like, shit, I don't know how this is going to play out. And I'm looking like, this is only episode 7. So I'm like, what's going to happen in this scene? What did you think about Josto's plan?
It was both smart and stupid in a way. Like for once, he actually, I think, read a person to some degree, and
I
and he got it partially right. He got it partially correct. Like I thought he was going to frame Rabbi to some degree and say like, yeah, Rabbi did it, like, but when he tied Calmeda in, and of course he couldn't implicate Rabbi because he's like, no, like he kind of knows Rabbi's character a little better than some of the other guys, and he knows Calmeda is a snake. He's like, so I can kill two birds with one stone here. I can get rid of Calmeda. I can blame him, and tell him that he can kill my brother. What he didn't estimate though was that Lloyd understood enough about him and his relationship with his brother to figure like, oh, that's what you want from me. You want me to kill your brother. And
Well, I was going to say, I think that's the biggest part, though, is that I think that his plan is not flawed. I think how he executed it was flawed. His, Josto, has come to Loy several times and didn't really have an air of arrogance about him when he talked to Loy previously. But during this whole thing, he had like this smug face. He didn't really apologize. It was like it
He's
felt,
changed his style even. You
yeah.
see how he's dressing now and sort of his way he presents himself.
I
Yeah.
think that's going to shoot him in his foot because, like you said, Larry, I think Loy read him. Josto finally did a decent job of having a good plan, but he executed it shittily. And I think Lloyd just read him, was like, "Oh, okay, I got you."
Well, I think he made another big mistake this episode too, which goes back to something the two of you said last week that I disagreed with. I think in the opening scene where they're asking, what to do with the body of the hitman, and he just really doesn't seem to give a crap, about ceremony or taking him to his family. He just wants them to just bury him somewhere to get rid of the body. I think that shows to me that he like that. Maybe he doesn't have the loyalty of his men because he doesn't seem to really give a crap much about them. He sees them as perhaps too disposable, and they're not 100%. Kind of privy to what his machinations are. So when he's that distant from them, when he's hatching a plan without consulting his number two, they're on the spot and then just expecting him to play along. When he just seems to see them all as disposable to meet his aims, that might shoot him in the foot.
There's a great scene with Loy Cannon where he's talking to Otis about, I think it was that scene, about one of his guys, and he's basically explaining how they see completely different in the way they see the and yet they still work together, and that guy still respects, and serves Loy Cannon and does what he wants. But he's someone who surrounds himself with people to question him. Dr. Senator was his conscience to some degree, was his guy, and I love the whole idea of, if you say his name, he will whoop your ass. Like there's a couple different scenes where he don't speak his name. Like for him, it's a sacred thing. Dr. Senator was a brother, was a someone that was extremely special to him, and it was taken from him. But seeing the difference in how both factions are operating as far as leadership, it's very obvious as far as the different styles of operating.
To me, it's the difference between confidence and arrogance. Loy is confident in his ability, but he also doesn't surround himself with yes men. You look at Josto, who thinks that he has all these people's loyalty. He thinks that he has all these.
And he's even screwing around with New York, which is insane. Yeah. Like he's talking shit like he doesn't care what New York has to say. They will take his ass out.
Well, yeah, and that's the way that Josto is clearly cornering himself here. That's
the arrogance part.
That's what made me think differently here. I'm like, okay, yeah, and I feel like it's to a point that clearly his gang sees it, and just little things, like there's a lot of little things, such as early on, well, not early on, but I think it was last episode or the episode before, where someone's saying something to him in Italian, and he's like, "Speak American." He's like he gives no craps about seemingly their traditions, and he doesn't seem to give a crap about their hierarchy either. He just wants to be in control, and he expects to have that loyalty without giving it in return, without respecting the order of things.
It reminds me of when you watch shows that have that medieval prince that's just a pompous asshole, and it's almost like a figurehead, but he doesn't really know what he's doing. That's how I see Josto. He feels like he's owed the loyalty of everybody else because of who his dad was, but he hasn't earned any of that. He hasn't done anything to show that he's worthy to take over that family, but he feels like he's owed it. And I'm just like, damn, dude, relax.
What did you think about Cannon seeing the credit card sign? That clearly was an important moment that helped him to reevaluate how he's operating, realizing that the deck's stacked against him in many ways, and how he has to operate differently in order to win, in order to get ahead. Um, I liked a lot of there's a lot of great scenes of just Canon, contemplating things, thinking about things. Um, Even the moment where he's looking at the Fada kid, I cannot remember. I absolutely don't remember that kid's name, but
Zero.
huh?
Zero.
Is it
Zero. It's
the kid?
Zero.
Okay.
Hmm.
And it's like, that moment, is he going to kill him? I never thought he was, but
I,
even in his mind thinking about it, like, but like, even he was like, that's fucked up. And that particular scene got me thinking about the whole idea of the sins of the, father. It's these kids have to live with the repercussions based around what their fathers are doing, and how messed up that is. And it doesn't make me completely sympathize with him, but it made me think more of even of Josto. Like, Josto was, him and Rabbi were both those kids. Remember, they both had to do that, go to the other side and everything. So it is interesting how this weird, twisted, fucked up cycle is affecting the storyline. I know I just brought up like 50 different things, but if y'all want to talk about any of that.
I don't know where to start now. It's like, yeah. What I want to start with is the fact that, for Lloyd, the fact that he did imagine killing him and everything and stuff. He clearly thought about it, and I think that's what that scene represented. That he wasn't really so much there around the corner and then changed his mind. I think it was more that he thought about it and thought about the fact that he could do it then and there.
I agree.
And but it goes back to the talk he gave. Maybe earlier, maybe later in the episode. I forget when he gave the speech about getting down in the dirt and not doing that, because then he is who he wants them to be.
I loved it. That was probably one of my favorite scenes in the episode.
Yeah.
When
So
Boy went on that speech talking about, like you said, Brian, he has to overcome all these things, and then Larry just alluded to it. He said that they see him as an animal. They see him as this, lesser than being, but to not stoop to that level so that he is considered better than that. And when, he was looking at Zero, when he's doing all these things, I thought that was like foreshadowing, is that he didn't want to become that person. For a moment, I was convinced he was going to do it because he was so grief stricken. I was just like, he's going to kill this kid. But, I think that, like you said, Larry, it's him kind of overcoming that, how he's perceived. He's trying to, rise above that, which is also why I think he tried to send Gaetano against, or Gaetano, depending on who's talking about him. The pronunciation changes a couple times, but I think that he is going to send him after Josto for him, so that way he doesn't have to get dirty. He doesn't have to do, those underhanded things that clearly he's capable of, but he's trying to rise above it and be the better person. I mean, he's an organized criminal, so I don't know how he's trying to be a better person, but I don't.
There are codes to live by, and Josto seems to be, at the bottom of the, in the trenches of just doing the worst thing. Like you said, Larry, and I didn't even put it in my notes, and I should have. I didn't think about it, but yeah, that the fact that he sent a guy on a mission, and as far as he knows, the guy was going to complete the mission, and the man was killed in the process, and he, what do we do with him, sir? Leave him for the birds. Like, just no respect. Just doesn't give a shit. And like I said, his whole demeanor and his whole dress and everything, now he feels he's this thing. And yeah, I'll be shocked if he survives the next episode. Because, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I feel like even the way that he's deciding to have Calmeda killed, I even feel that, that his gang may feel some kind of way about that, because of such an underhanded and indirect way it is to deal with them. It's like, can you trust that you can safely work under Josto? It's like, so not only there would he lose loyalty, he'd lose trust to some degree, because if they can't if they can't trust in the order of things, that he's the capo and he's not just you're not disposable, or at least the idea I get from Calmeida's position is that he's not supposed to be 100% disposable in his position. So it kind of looks bad to double cross him in that way.
And he seems to be Calameda seems to be at one point one of the top guys in the organization.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. He seems too high up for this,
And what happens if he goes to another city and talks to another family about the situation? You know what I mean? Like, we don't know where he's going or what he's going to do. We know the Cannon gang is hunting him, but yeah, well, what if he comes back with someone? I mean, I don't know.
Well, and I think, like you guys said about Joster just leaving Antoon to the birds, they use Antoon's house as like a main place of operations. So to me, it's not just a random person in the organization where they just don't care. Antoon was like one of their top guys.
Yeah, he's not just a legit, just a normal foot soldier. You're right. He has his family and like the whole.
Like Satchel was staying there. They felt like he was safe enough to leave there. They had other people living at his. So he was. I mean, he wasn't the top, but he was probably a captain. Like, he was probably he was probably right there underneath, like Calmeida and the was it consigliere or whatever.
Yeah, well, he's the right hand, the conscience, if you will, yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. What if Calmeida happens to see Josto's number 2 before he sees Josto next, and he fills him in on the plan and just kind of lets him know he might want to lay low because Josto's trying to kill him. Because Josto's number 2, I can't remember the guy's name, the gentleman that used to speak with Dr. Senator all the time. He seemed shocked by what was going on when he was in the room and Josto was going through his plan.
Well, and like you said, if he ends up double crossing Josto because he doesn't, I think that the consigliere or whatever, I think he fears New York because everything he was saying was, that's not what New York wants. That's not what New York wants. So now Josto is going 100% against New York. So although he is supposed to be Josto's conscience, Josto's right-hand man, I think that he may be the one who undoes Josto.
Yeah, because at some point he's got to look out for his own neck, and Josto's got too many. He's got too many pieces in play right now that he's trying to do, and
he's about to get them all killed.
Right?
That shit out.
Having Otis. What do you think his plan is for Otis? We get a whole setup of Otis is clearly gonna run. He wraps all of his individual little precious, his little figurines, and this whole scene he's gonna leave. For a minute, I thought he was either gonna actually leave or somebody was gonna kill him, and I was sort of getting irritated by that. That was the one thing that was bothering me because I was like, if that happens, what the hell was the point of Otis? But then that doesn't happen. He gets taken in, they have a little meeting, and clearly whatever Cannon's ultimate overarching plan is, Otis is a part of it. And I'm very curious to what that part is.
We talked about that, Brian. That was one of the funniest scenes to me when Loy's men were, come up to him and tell him to get in the car. I'm the one who tells people to get in the car. Okay. And then they just hop in the back of his car and tell him, let's go. I thought that was brilliant. It was very cleverly done. It was funny.
Yeah. It looked like for a minute there we might be looking at the end of Otis's story. But, he's in this whether he likes it or not. And, I'm not sure whether I mentioned it here just now when we were talking or earlier. But, I think that Otis is going to reach a breaking point. Because he's being pulled so many different ways, because everything seems pretty unescapable for him. And, and that's one of the things I think maybe Duffy's undoing. I think he might press Otis at the wrong time, and I think Otis might actually be the one to kill Duffy, if anybody.
He might. I mean, Otis is dealing with a lot, he has PTSD, OCD, he has a lot of shit going on. And yeah,
Everybody's pressing them.
ADHD, ODD.
So the one concern I have as far as Cannon's plan, by the end of it, you're like, all right, Cannon knows what he's doing. He's got a situation locked down. Giatano's getting released. Clearly, he's going to go back and all shit's going to go crazy with the Fadas. But the one X factor, the one unknown that I do not think Loy is aware of, is Orietta Mayflower. She's in the middle. She's right across the street from one of his properties. She's zeroing in on Ethelrita, who's technically part of the Cannon crew now. And what she's working with Josto, sort of, yes and no, but they have somewhat of a relationship. What the hell? That to me, that's the X factor. That's the one thing, because I think Loy is aware of Defi to some degree, or at least that there's a cop floating around, but he doesn't know shit about her. I don't think. And that, to me, that's the X factor that could fuck everything up.
I don't know for sure if he knows what she's capable of. I don't know that anybody other than Ethelrita knows the extent of what she is. I think that everybody just kind of sees her as this crazy nurse, and Josto sees her as, someone fun to have sex with, but that's about the extent of what they see of her, except for Ethelrita. Ethelrita knows who she is and what she's capable of.
Yeah, and I think you may have just pieced some things together for me, Brian. I think that we're seeing that, like we were seeing death just kind of lingering around. Well, I'll just call it death. The supernatural thing that we've seen episode to episode. And we saw it focused on Ethelrita last episode. And now we see it looking at Lemuel. Like, is this Lemuel's death via Nurse Mayflower trying to get back at Ethelrita? Perhaps, poisoning something in the funeral home? Maybe Lemuel just stops by to drop off some other stuff and eats a cookie.
That is absolutely possible. And the way this story is playing, I agree. Something like that could happen.
Damn, if somebody poisons some cookies, I'd be fucking dead.
That is true.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned earlier. All she had to do was bake some chocolate chip cookies or something, and she'd get anybody. But she chooses to poison you with whatever your favorite treat is. She takes a joy in it. She learns new recipes to poison people.
She does. Yeah, you're right. She seeks out what you love, and kills you with it.
Neckerdoodle, a lasagna, a pizza. She'll make me a pizza. Shit.
I say that might kill me without the poison at this point.
Too many carbs, man. So that was the bulk of the episode. We went through just about every scene. The only scene we didn't talk about, and we can talk about it real quick, is Calameda was sent to basically wipe out the Cannon family, and he's stopped by Cannon's wife. She's armed with a shotgun. And,
that was great.
Yeah, great scene. Protects the family, and then he flees. Any thoughts on that particular scene?
Oh yeah, that was a good scene, and I wasn't quite sure how she was going to handle that, but she definitely showed that she wasn't as defenseless as it seemed in previous episodes, because I wasn't sure whether there was somebody else there, or whether this was going to be another twist where Calmeda busts in, doesn't find anybody there, but takes Zero. And I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen, but her pulling out the shotgun was definitely a surprise.
That was yet again another one of the scenes, like I said at the very beginning, that I was like, oh shit, what's going to like every scene kept happening, and I was like, I have no idea what's going to happen next.
Right.
And it just keeps building and building and building. A lot of, by the final scene, I truly am excited. I'm more excited for next week than I've been for any of the episodes, in terms of the anticipation of holy shit. It almost feels like a season finale was set up, and yet it wasn't because there are 3 episodes after next week's episode. But this almost felt like that, like it was setting up a season finale.
And I was very surprised to see because clearly it seems speaking of Lloyd's wife, clearly he delivered the news that he believes that their son is dead to her. And,
yes,
and
that
yet,
scene, yeah.
and yet you still see them together later that night. I was surprised by that because she was furious about the whole arrangement. I thought she might have walked out at that point.
I was sort of happy with the fact that we didn't have to deal with that whole drama of her, being mad. You know what I mean? Like they sort of glossed over it, and I was actually happy about that. That at this point she's all in with the family and the family business.
Right.
Well, and it was one of those things that they've already, they already had that discussion. They've already had the, don't put this shit on me. And then, when it came down to it, instead of blaming him for it, she was just there for him because the boy
he was devastated.
Yeah. So I think that now, who's to know, 3 episodes from now when she's like, all right, you're okay now. What the fuck is your problem? Like but in that moment, she was trying to be there for him instead of throwing it in his face.
Yeah. Well, that's literally all I have. Anything else you guys want to talk about as far as this episode, or what you're looking forward to next week?
I'm just looking forward to finding out why everybody was saying episode 8 is the game changer episode, because that's the next one. So I'm very interested to see what it is what they're going to cover, because they raise a lot of questions. They built up a lot of different storylines, but I'm curious as to how they're going to tie those storylines up. Because I think that if this is the big game changer, is any of our theories going to happen? Is the Irish gang going to come back? Is, the New York gang going to come down and basically wipe out this, crew of people? Is Josto going to get shot in the face by Giatano? Like, there's a lot of questions.
And let's not forget the group out in Fargo.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's right.
I don't know that episode 8 is going to be Loy's crew coming. I think that episode 8, I think, will probably focus more on the Italians, just because of all the steps that have been put in place. But I think that the Fargo crew is going to come down when the New York crew shows up, and I think that's when we'll see those two gangs. But I think right now the biggest not issue, but I think the biggest thing that is still yet to be tackled is what's going to happen between Josto and Gaetano.
Yeah, that's what I'm most curious about too. This division in their gang happen as soon as Giatano gets back. Now that he knows that his brother was trying to get him killed, that because at this point, Giatano and Josto, both know where they stand with each other. So how does that play out? Is next episode just those two hashing things out? Giatano and the guys from New York and Josto and whoever remains loyal to him, or are we in for like a sort of a 3-way conflict?
That could be. Yeah, I agree with all those things as far as what could happen.
What if, I just thought of this, we were talking about what a U.S. Marshal does. What if Josto turned state's witness?
I mean, I don't know if a boss. I guess he could.
He could.
He could. Yeah.
Especially if we're right about his gang turning on him. I mean, if what y'all said it happened, holds out, Josto very well could. Being kind of the snake he is, he could pull a Goodfellas.
That's the only way I see Josto surviving this.
That would be funny.
I made a reference to a movie I've actually seen.
I have one final question, and then unless you don't have anything else, we can wrap it up. Death, the ghost, the whatever. Will that have a major part in this show, or is that just a symbolic? Like, what do you think? Do you think that there's going to be a supernatural element that hits the show hard, or just keep doing what they've been doing with it?
I think that I don't know if it's a big part. I think that it is a part of the show. I think that it's going to have, some meaning later, but I don't know that it's going to be super important. I think that in previous seasons of Fargo, I haven't watched any of the other seasons yet. That may be something that I do during December when, there's a few less things coming on TV. But I think that there are other elements in those shows that are like that, but they don't really take precedence over the main story. And I think that this will be something that's there, but I don't think that it's going to be a major thing one way or the other.
Yeah, it's I'm still not sure, but my assumption is, and correct me if I'm wrong, or anyone in the comments if you want to, uh, but I'm starting to think that this thing that we see that we've been referring to as death. I think it's related to Nurse Mayflower's actions. So or at least it has been so far from what I've been seeing. With the pie and everything, and like then lingering over Ethelrita as Nurse Mayflower is right before Nurse Mayflower has her argument with Doctor what's his name, Dr. Harvard. That's right. I knew it was an Ivy League school or something. But yeah, just as he's having that. So I think it
Dr.
may be,
Princeton.
so that
Dr. Cornell.
So I feel like it'll appear, but it'll be in relation to something that Nurse Mayflower does. I think I think it has to do with her and her victims, like and her history of just causing these deaths.
Yeah, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. Anything else, guys?
I think that covers it.
Cool. Yeah, another great episode. Handful, 4 left? 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 4 left. As I said up front, we're doing The Undoing. Check that out. We're doing The Mandalorian. If you've not watched our Mandalorian review, check that out. And we will see you next time. Bye.